Hey everybody, welcome to this video and installment of Modern Faith. I'm Jonathan Gaylord, the pastor at Yadkinville United Methodist Church, and today I am joined by my good friend Katie Todd, who I introduced in the video, so I'm not going to introduce her here. But today's video is a little bit longer because we just get into a great conversation about faith and parenting in the midst of a pandemic. So I hope that you enjoy it. And before we jump over to that conversation, make sure you hit like and subscribe. And there's a little bell icon down underneath the video that you can hit, and that will give you notifications about every time Yadkinville UMC posts a new video. So after you've hit that like button and now hit that subscribed button, let's get on with our conversation. All right, well, we are here with Katie Barrett Todd, and she is the pastor, campus minister at UKirk, which is the campus ministry for the Presbyterian Church USA in Greensboro. So serving all of the campuses over there, and she can tell us more about that. But she is also the mom of two elementary aged kids. And so we are going to talk about parenting and faithful parenting during a pandemic. So Katie, I'll let you, what do we need to know about you as we enter into this conversation?
Oh, wow. Let's see. Yes, UKirk, Greensboro, campus ministry for 5 schools in and around Greensboro. So actually, it's interesting that we're doing this topic because part of my ministry is a residential ministry. So during the pandemic, I have not only been a parent to elementary age children, I've kind of also become a parent to college students as well. I've morphed from being just the campus minister into kind of a landlord and a parent about, make good choices and a little bit more than normal. But I am sitting right now in the library of my home. I don't know if you can see it back in the corner. There's the little alphabet up at the top. We turned our library, which is supposed to be a dining room in our house, but we're not dining room people. Yeah. We're book people. So we turned it into the schoolroom. So I am sitting at the big desk that my 2 children share for school right now. So yeah, parenting elementary students who are remote learners during the pandemic, I am going to put on my resume that I am passing 2nd and 3rd grade again.
Nice. Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. And where you are is completely remote. Like there isn't even an option to be in person, correct?
Well, Guilford County Schools is changing. My 2nd grader right now could be in the classroom, but we kept her remote because of her teacher. The 3rd graders and above are all remote until at least January, until Guilford County Schools makes a change. So for us, it was just easier to be, okay, apparently I have a child.
Parenting during a pandemic right there.
Parenting during a pandemic, yep. For us right now, it was just easier to have everybody stay remote. And I've never really paid as much attention to what my children are learning in school right now as I have since March of this past year. So Guilford County Schools, they can't really make up their mind about what they want to do as far as who is remote and who is at home. So we just decided we're staying remote. And then when they fluctuate on decisions, it doesn't really affect us.
Yeah. That's one of the nice things about being clergy, and Katie's husband is also a pastor, is the flexibility to kind of make those decisions. And I really feel for those families who are having to work in person, and so either have to balance childcare or balance the remote learning piece, because it also where we are in Yadkin County, the elementary school students are now in person throughout the week, or at least have that option. But middle school and high school students also have the option of doing the hybrid A day, B day, Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, where everybody's virtual on Wednesday. And that just seems like a nightmare, childcare wise to me. And so we could pull it off because my wife is also working virtually and has the ability to kind of compress her schedule down to work particular days. And I have the freedom to kind of do what I need to do to make that work. but just like can't imagine doing all of this and also having kind of a job that I have to go into 9 to 5.
Exactly. Yeah, there is a group of kids that our kids play tennis with,
Mhm.
and we felt safe with that because it's an outdoor
Mhm.
activity. And so that we call ourselves the tennis moms. And so we sit around outside while the kids are playing tennis twice a week. And we have just, one has had to quit her job. One is she travels a lot for work. And of course, travel has been grounded, but she now, because she can't travel, she has to work with some international time zones
Mhm.
as far as work is concerned. So we've got parents that in this little group, we've got us who are fully remote. We've got one family who does a small pod and has brought in a teacher
Mhm.
with their neighbors, who is in their backdoor pod that they have, their backyard pod. We have one family who's in a pod with two other students, and the parents, the moms, handle the pod 3 days
Okay.
a week.
Mhm.
And then we have another family who is just, they're doing the best that they can.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, if the kids get all the assignments done, great.
Mhm.
If not, we'll make them up on the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So I know for us, so we've got a 2-year-old and then a
mhm.
3-month old later this week. So
I
for
was
the
going to
three
say
month, yeah,
already.
yeah, already. So the 3-month old, like he's got his own schedule and does his own thing. The 2-year-old wasn't in daycare at the beginning of the pandemic, went back to daycare, and we pulled him out a couple weeks ago just
Mm,
for the winter, just because of the numbers and the way that they're going. Um, but like for him, like he has memories of church, and like
hmm
the daycare like is in walking distance from the church in my office. So I'd pick him up, and we'd, because of the one-way nature of the street, we'd have to drive out by the church, and he'd always
mm,
kind of wave at the church and go, "Hi, church," and go, "Daddy's church, Mommy's church, Henry's church," and he'd list all the people whose church it was. And now like he can, whenever I go to work, um, sometimes during the week, but especially on Sundays, like he knows like we're going to watch Daddy on TV,
mm.
because we're doing virtual worship.
Yeah.
And so it's like for him, like just the being in church and the contact with people in church and the being loved in church, it would be the faith formation that he'd be getting at this stage anyway, which he's just like not getting outside the family, just because of the nature of the pandemic.
hmm
Um, but like how are your kids handling kind of, or how are you and your family handling faith formation, because I know you guys are still completely virtual with, at least with worship and all that kind of
Yes.
stuff.
Well, before I answer that, I was going to ask you,
Hmm.
how is he handling the being out just from school, the school perspective? How is he
Yeah.
handling being out, going back in, and then coming back out again?
So like there is a transition each time, but he settled in, like when we went back to daycare, um, like he settled into like getting his temperature taken and uh, playing with all of his friends. And since he's been out now for I guess close to a month, but a couple weeks ago he just like was talking about his friends at school. In the way that 2-year-olds can talk about them just by saying
hmm
their names. And so like that was a little bit heartbreaking because he's not seeing them anymore. But for the most part, like he's like settled into a new routine. And for him, like having that routine and that structure has been really, really good, even though it's like 2-year-old structure of you
Yeah.
wake up, uh, some days you get to watch your 30 minutes of TV, depending on like how tired dad is when and how early you wake up.
So true.
You
So
you eat
true.
you eat your breakfast. I'll go to work, and then Carrie, my wife, stays home, and like they'll go outside, they'll go on their walk. We
hmm
did from our neighbors acquire their old like play set. So
hmm
now he has like a big slide and swings in the backyard, and has been
That's
loving that.
awesome.
And
That's
then he,
awesome. Well,
yeah,
I'm glad that, he's kind of at the age where he can be flexible
yeah, yeah.
enough and he's not going to remember any of this. Um, in one of the things that I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Let me go back to answer your question. The way that we're trying to remember this and frame this in our family, we're trying to think of it as it's different. Hopefully it's a once in a lifetime thing. But you had asked about faith formation and worship in church. And so my children were in a play on March 13th and 14th. And we didn't know if they were going to be able to pull off the play because the governor had given the orders for no groups over 100. So they were able to get in the play. And then Saturday night, almost overnight, we had to transform the only real open space that we have in our house into a worship space so that we could go virtual for Sunday morning, March 15th. And that happens to be my children's playroom, which is the room over the garage. So their world has been rocked in that we have taken up half of their playroom, and it's got recording equipment and tripods with lights and, all of the stuff and microphones and everything. And at first we kind of created a playground situation where they could be in there while we were live, and we would, hey, if you hear children, that's because the children are in the service with us while we're live. And then we started recording when we got kicked off of both Facebook Live and YouTube Live on Easter Sunday in the middle of the worship service. And we just decided that Mason's Church, I say we because I'm the tech person. I now have become the tech person for his church. Mason's Church just said, we're just do it pre-recording. So we had been pre-recording, and I would edit, and we would try really hard to pre-record early enough so that at least on Saturdays, the kids could have their playroom all to themselves. The really weird thing for them, though, has been Sunday mornings. They are so used to going to church, primarily with dad's church. As a campus minister, I work, my worship is Tuesday nights. And then on Sundays, I just fill pulpits as there's a need. So there are a few churches that I've been to before that I'm comfortable taking my children with me because they know people. Otherwise, they go with dad. And so Sunday mornings, we have really tried to make it as unique as possible and do things that families can normally do on Sunday morning that we can't. We'll make cinnamon rolls. Don't get excited. They're just the Pillsbury rolls. I don't cook. But we'll make cinnamon rolls, and then we'll let them watch TV on Sunday morning until it's time for church. And then they'll come down in their pajamas and watch church. And then we would always order, we'll order takeout from a local restaurant to support local still, and kind of do that. And there have been Sundays now that they're just tired of that. I mean, obviously I have two extroverts, and I'm an introvert. And so it's a lot. They would rather see all the people and give all the hugs and the high fives and be up in people's faces at church, than just come downstairs and sit on the couch and watch dad on the TV. Sometimes mom on the TV, but it's been hard. For a while I tried to, one of my favorite resources is Illustrated Ministries. And so for a while I would print out the sheets that they would give, and have the kids color during church, kind of like if they had a children's bulletin. And then they got tired of that. And they don't even want to sing during the hymns because there's really nobody to sing with. It's just the four of us. So it's been really hard for this age group. And I don't know, what do y'all do on Sunday morning? I mean, how does Sunday morning work for you? Does it even feel like a holy space and time?
So like we're still live. We do Zoom and Zoom to Facebook Live.
Gotcha.
So like at the beginning, like when Zoom was still figuring out like, oh man, at 11 o'clock or from 9 to 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings, we all of a sudden have all this traffic that we weren't having before. So like in the beginning it was rough, and like in the beginning I was also doing worship from home. So like figuring out space around that was interesting. And we kept making little adjustments that made it slightly better for me. But now we're doing Zoom from our worship space, from our sanctuary, and from our Family Life Center, depending on the Sunday. And Carrie stays home with the boys, and they watch.
Okay.
They plug the computer into the TV and watch that way. So like it's been different, but for me, it's still been like I go to this place and do this thing.
But for the family,
But for the family,
they're at home and they don't see dad
yep.
doing his thing in person.
Yep. So they watch on TV, and our oldest, he knows like we're gonna watch dad on at church, and like it's a thing, but like he's still 2, so like if we were in the facility and everyone was gathering for in-person worship, like he'd just be all over the place and saying hi to people and pretending to be shy. And then at the like one of the last services we had before the pandemic hit, he just like came up the aisle while I was doing the benediction. I was just like held my hand while I did the benediction, and like just like this walking back and forth and being present in the space that he doesn't get to do. There were a couple weeks after his brother was born where he came and one of the youth came and watched him while we were recording. But even that was different. Like, I don't think he like had a like, because there weren't other people there when I was preaching, like he's just like, dad's just standing there talking. And so like he wanted to be up in that preaching space. And so like the absence of people really does influence how, especially like at 2, 3, and I guess probably even for your kids, like the faith formation is just the people
so much,
and being loved and being cared for.
Absolutely. So I don't know how you are as a pastor parent, but I know that this is a family recording right now conversation, but I suck at it. And I remind congregations that I do this as a vocation. I am called to this, and I spend a lot of time in conversation and in study and in preparation and leading. And so when I get home, which there's really no separation between home and work right now,
anymore,
but you know, usually during home hours, I'm not teaching my children the ways of, you know, church life or religious formation and things like that. My children have learned how to hold a hymn book by watching people
hold a hymn book.
My children know the Lord's Prayer because they have learned it saying it beside generations. My children, you know, they know the ins and outs. I have this beautiful story of serving at supplying at one church where I have a great relationship, and Lily, my youngest, at the time she was 5, and it was a communion Sunday. And in the Presbyterian church, some churches don't have communion every Sunday. So it was a communion Sunday, and we talked about communion. It was around July 4th. So we kind of talked about communion as being this meal, kind of like a picnic where Jesus was gathered with friends. And so we set the communion table with a picnic blanket and, you know, brought all of the elements out of a picnic basket. And I went and I'd asked the children to help set the table, and I asked the children to help be the ones to invite everybody to come forward. And I went to go hand the bread to, I was going to be holding the bread. I was handing the juice to one of the elders that was serving with me. And I asked my daughter to hold the bread for a second while I could hand the juice off. And I turned around, and this daughter who likes to be in the space, I remember those moments. She took the bread, and people at this point were already coming forward to take communion. And I looked at her and I said, "Okay, Lily, I'll take this back." And she went, "Mm-mm." She's like, no.
Yeah.
And, the mom in me is like,
Mhm.
don't fight with me right now. Just not right now.
Just give the
And
bread back. Yeah.
that's right. Just give me the bread. Let me do this.
Mhm.
And the pastor and me stepped back because people had come forward, and she took the bread to the first person and said, this is Jesus for you.
Mhm.
And that moment I said, this is the most holy thing that could possibly happen, because these children understand that they are invited to this
Mhm.
table, and this is who they are, and that they are able to stand up and say, this is for me, but this is for you
Mhm.
too. And those are the things that we're not having.
Yeah.
When we're pre-recording communion, they'll take the leftover English muffin that we break,
Mhm.
and they'll eat it, and they think it's fun, but they don't get to watch people
Mhm.
come forward and to sing the hymns
Mhm.
around it and to say the prayers together with anybody but us, and
Yeah.
occasionally grandma and grandpa who come,
Mhm.
who come
Yeah, yeah,
visit. um yeah, it's it's been I'm really glad that you asked me to have this conversation with you, because I've been so in the thick of just getting day to day,
Mhm.
of especially with school, making sure they get the assignments done and everything, that I haven't really stopped to think so much about how this is impacting them
Mhm.
in their faith lives, because I don't focus on it at home.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some nights when I'm like, Jesus loves you, go to bed. Love you. Good night. I'll see you in the
Mhm.
morning. Um, and then there are other days when I'm like, let's just sit down and let's just spend some time
Mhm.
together and talk about how this is impacting you and
Yeah.
how it's impacting me. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's and I really hope that I hope that for your kids' ages that this, I don't know, I don't want to say that this is like an irreparable time in their
Mhm.
lives, like this is irreparable damage in faith formation. I don't
Yeah.
I don't want to go that far, but this is such a formative time
Mhm.
in their understanding of the world.
Mhm.
And when it's important to us as parents and those who have vowed to raise children in a faith-based home, um, I really hope that this ends soon enough
Yeah,
or
yeah.
goes back to some kind of normalcy, so that your children can get back into being up in dad's
Mhm.
space while he's preaching
Yeah.
and giving the benediction.
Yeah. And I guess for your kids, like they do have like they have that ground of like they did go to church I guess every Sunday,
Hmm.
or at least most Sundays, 50 Sundays out of the year,
Yep.
um, and like have that kind of foundation to lean back on. And then like my kids are, they're kind of coming, our oldest at least is coming into it. Our youngest still has like another 6 to 8 months before like
Hmm.
it really becomes something that uh he'll be really aware of. um but yeah, like that sense of, I don't know, not getting this time back is real. Especially like and I think we talk about it a lot in terms of education. We talk about it like in the schools and getting to see family, like especially right now, like we're recording this right before Thanksgiving, so uh all of the holiday traditions, like we don't get
Hmm.
Thanksgiving or Christmas, Advent 2020 back to do over. um and so we talk about that a lot, but I don't know that we talk about faith formation a whole lot, or at least I haven't heard anyone talking about it a whole lot. And
Yeah.
maybe that's on me, like as a pastor, that I haven't been talking about it. um, but
Well, and I think
also,
that goes back to, we're, as the pastors, we're also just trying to juggle all the
yeah,
balls,
yeah.
and the people that
Mhm.
would normally be there to help us with everything,
Yeah.
and to plan the
Mhm.
extra events,
Yeah.
and the extra special
Mhm.
things around these times of year, they're not around.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when we do, our family ends up, for better or worse, taking a back seat,
Mhm.
with all of that. Um, Yeah, one of the things that we have tried to do, and I don't know where I got the idea. I do know that it came from a children's ministry director at a church. I overheard someone talking about how their church children's director said, "Oh, we'll create this little time capsule." And I thought, that's an idea. So we have what we call the blue box. And this blue box it was literally, I have a box we can use.
Yeah.
But inside of it is things that all have some kind of significance of things that have happened during this time. So like both of my kids had a birthday. So we have a birthday candle. One of my children ended up in the emergency room. So we have the bracelet. We have some pictures from events. We have cards that they have received. We have a note from one of the teachers. We're just trying to kind of keep some things in here. We have an Easter card because we thought this would be over after Easter. And yet here we are. Even something like this year we missed like the blessing of the backpacks because our kids didn't have backpacks. So our kids got iPads this year, and so we gave them stickers that they could
illustrated ministry stickers.
Illustrated ministries, that's right. So we gave them these, and then on their notebooks they have these, which is another one of my colleagues who Vibrant Church Communications, she made these. So we're trying to give them things just to remember who you are, and that you are loved even in this weird time, and that you have this because you are so loved, you have this responsibility to make sure other people feel that love as well. We I shared with you a picture. We made, this definitely came from one of my seminary colleagues, Megan Argerbright. She's a pastor in Charlotte. About a week into the pandemic, she made a chalkboard and just stuck it to a tree in her front yard. And I don't know if hers is still going or not, but we actually made a chalkboard installation in our front yard. And so I took a picture this morning, and the picture this morning, it says, be kind, be just be kind. We have this chalkboard that the kids painted and put up. We have a bucket on it that has chalk. And occasionally we'll put things up like for happy birthday for the kids, or Merry Christmas, or Happy Thanksgiving, or whatever. But that piece that's on there, somebody in the neighborhood just wrote that on there. And it's been so much fun just to share a little bit of a space for people to share joy and love. And so one of the things that we have done is, we don't have so much of the teaching the pieces of worship and the pieces of church. We've actually been able to move into having more conversation about what does life look like as a Christian, probably earlier than we would have with our kids. Those are the things that you kind of talk about in middle school youth group and high school and college. But especially over the summer, when there were all the protests going on and things, we talked a lot about how does that impact us, and how do we have impact in that as well. And what is our responsibility as followers of Christ? But this is it's just such a weird, hard time right now.
And I guess like what you just said, like strikes me, because at least for the first like portion of Christian kids' lives, like the formation, like you've got VBS and you've got all this other stuff where we're trying to like do like basic faith formation, like lay these building blocks, and you've got worship where like you learn the Lord's Prayer, you learn how to use the hymnal, you learn when to stand up and sit down, like that kind of stuff. And we hope that it absorbs somehow, like just through the rote repetition of it. But like, you're right, like this is an opportunity to like do the kind of harder, like, what does a Christian look like? And let our kids kind of fill in those gaps of what they think being a Christian looks like, without necessarily like relying upon the worship space to form. I don't know if that's
Yes,
good or bad or just different.
and also not really relying on the Sunday school teachers to be the ones to teach it. This has been a time of, people, we talk to our kids about the fact that the masks keep us safe and they keep other people safe, but we do it because we love other people, and we don't want to be responsible for other people becoming ill. Or when we go to the grocery store, when I make a list, we have a bag of food that we will, throughout the month, we'll put a bag together, and I'll make a list for the grocery store, and the kids will look in the bag and they'll say, all right, we need to get some more cereal, or we need to get some more whatever. And normally I would let them go to the store with me. Not right now. But they get to help me put the list together, and then one of them each month will take the responsibility of putting the bag in the place where it gets picked up for the food bank. And just realizing that, I mean, we've even had conversations about the fact that they get to be able to be at home and have we had a long conversation about internet access, and how the fact that internet access allows people to be able to worship right now, and it allows students to be able to have school, and it allows parents to be able to work. And my son's mind was blown when he realized that internet didn't just happen because he opened his computer. We talked about what a privilege it is to be able to afford to have that access.
That access isn't guaranteed, and not everyone has it. So there are differences in opportunity even there.
And these are also things that we think about, as I'm sure you've had the conversations with your church leadership about, well, what do we do for our members that don't watch online? How do we make sure that they get to be able to still participate in the life of church? We right as this all began, we put together Lent bags. So the kids helped us put bags together in the, Lily, you put the crosses in, Luke, you put the nails in, So we lined up all the bags in the living room, made them. And then the kids spent 2 days in the car with us, driving around and delivering the bags and a hymn book to churches or to church members. And they thought it was a lot of fun to do the ding dong dash. So we made a little game out of it, but they got to realize that I think that was their first realization that church was going to be different. And it was going to be different for a while, and that there really is something to the space and the things that you have to help create routine and feeling holy during a time. So I've talked a lot.
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry.
It's the idea, right?
That is the idea, but I've talked a lot.
And even that feeling of being holy, I think, is something that even adults struggle with in this time. So being a parent, nurturing your own kind of faith life, and then also being responsible all of a sudden in a way, parents have always been responsible for the faith life of their children. But part of that responsibility is making sure they go to church or participate in the life of the church in different ways. And so it's all of a sudden this big thing that we did to make sure we were meeting this obligation of plugging our kids into Christian community, suddenly we can't do it. So
absolutely.
And
I've had conversations with colleagues who, they, as from their professional role, are feeling inadequate because they're well, I want to offer these things to families, but families just can't add another thing to their plate right now. And so we're trying to figure out the best way to serve families so that they don't feel so overwhelmed by having to take on this extra duty. But it's professionally and parenting. I mean, as I mentioned, I really suck at it. I mean, I'm really good at tucking my children in, and I'm going to let you in on the blessing that we say to them each night. Don't tell Luke because he would get really mad. When we were with family recently, I blessed my niece with our nightly blessing, and he looked at me and was like, "That's ours. Why are you telling other people that?"
Our blessing, Mom.
That's right. That's ours. Why are you doing this? So our blessing, I realized when I had my son that I was never going to be able to let my child, I didn't think that I was going to be able to adequately let my children know how much they are loved. And if they didn't take anything else away from being pastors' children, I wanted them to know that there was nothing that they could do. Romans, there's nothing that you can do that will separate you from the love of God. So I would put my son to bed at night and I would tell him, I love you more than you'll ever know, and almost as much as God loves you. So I want them to know that. And that is our nightly blessing. Well, then they learned from friends that they have a nightly blessing where they tell each other, the kids and the parents tell each other, rest well, beloved child of God. So now we have this nightly blessing that is this whole production. And it's turned into like crossing and hearts on the forehead. And so basically it boils down to, I love you more than you'll ever know, and almost as much as God loves you. And I'll say part of it and they'll say the rest back. And then we say, rest well, beloved child of God. And then they'll say, rest well, beloved mommy of God, which is kind of funny because I'm like, well, I'm a mommy and I'm of God. So we'll just let that go.
Let's slide with it.
That's right. We'll just roll with it right now. And then we will also just wish each other sweet dreams. And so it's this whole thing that I have realized during this pandemic, if that's the only thing I can get done as a parent right now, I'm at least getting that done. And there are days when I struggle to even get that done, but it has become so ingrained in them that the first time they repeated it back to me, I was like, okay, there is something to this, and they are internalizing this and realizing this. And, if that's the only thing I can get done on a day as a parent, as far as faith formation during the middle of a global pandemic, then I think I'm doing okay.
Yeah. Bedtime rituals are just, I guess, like we could do an entire episode just on bedtime rituals. With our 2-year-old has had the same bedtime ritual since he started sleeping in his own room. That involves every night we sing Peace Like a River. And at some point, like I got bored with Peace Like a River. So like I started singing Peace Like a River in Spanish because I was doing a lot of Duolingo and wanted to translate it. So now we do Peace Like a River, and then we do the first verse again in Spanish, which like oddly enough is the only verse it's like the verse that he started singing along with. But then we start praying, and last week, just as he's gotten more vocal and like really leaned into making complete sentences, I just asked him like, who do you want to pray for? Which has just been like an interesting insight into like both the way his mind works and what he's concerned about. Because one night it was some of our friends who live in DC. So Uncle Chuck, and he says Uncle Caitlin, and Megan. So he's like, I want to pray for them. But like most nights it's monkeys and piggies and he's got a couple other animals that he pretty consistently lists. So it might have also been because we were going to the zoo. So like he had animals on his brain. But sometimes he just goes animals. Like, what was it? What do you want to pray for? And I'll go animals. It's like, okay, well, we'll pray for animals.
That's right.
So like even that like little thing of like you have the ability to pray and to choose what we're talking to God about.
That's
I
right.
think has been really important, and it's also just fun to hear what he has to say about, like, who do you want to pray for? Animals.
Animals.
And he just says it so matter of factly.
Any in particular? Nope, just animals.
Animals.
In general,
Yeah.
animals.
Monkeys and pigs.
Monkeys. See,
Dogs.
I miss
Yeah.
that part. We used to have prayers for all
Yeah.
of our stuffed
Mhm.
friends
Yeah.
that we slept with. I miss that. I mean,
Yeah.
we pray for Momo and
Yeah.
Bear, because we're really creative with names for stuffed
Yeah.
animals in our house. We have Bear and Bunny and Squirrel.
Yeah. He's got the caterpillar from Hungry Hungry Caterpillar, whose name is Hungry, and then
See, that's creative.
yeah, and then a blue bear who we didn't name, but like its tag just said Jelly Bean, so we're like, well, this bear's name is Jelly Bean, so he's got Hungry and Jelly Bean. But he's growing up. He's in that stage of like things starting to scare him, so like now Hungry and Jelly Bean sleep at his feet instead of at his head.
Okay.
But he still wants them in the crib, just on the other side of the crib.
Yeah. So when we, interestingly enough, when we had that kind of phase, we talked a lot about the fact, and Hungry and Jelly Bean, Momo and FOMO and all them, they would have to go with us everywhere. We talked a lot about the fact that our friends have to stay in our bed during the daytime because they need to get their sleep. They sleep during the daytime so they can stay up at night and make sure you're safe all night long. And so that kept us from having to drag 15 stuffed friends around with us everywhere we went.
It's funny. Like he's got a moose that he loves playing with outside of the crib, but like if you try to put it in the crib, he's like, no, the moose does not live in the crib. Like, it is unacceptable. Okay.
Moose can stay over here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Well, so we are well over a lot of time, but I enjoyed the conversation. I probably, if you're hearing this, I didn't cut anything out really. So I hope you enjoyed it and got to this part. But a few resources that we mentioned that if you want to incorporate some more faith formation into your time with your kids or grandkids, Illustrated Ministry is a great resource. They have weekly bulletins that go along with the lectionary. So I preach through Advent. I'll be preaching the lectionary, so their stuff will line up. If you're at one of our Yadkinville folks, and a lot of churches do the lectionary. They also have just Advent resources. So Advent wreaths and all that kind of stuff. There are also resources out there where you can find prayers for blessing your Christmas tree or your Christmas lights.
Yes. Tracy Smith, who is an author, she's a pastor in, I believe, Chicago. Fabulous author. She has written a book called Faithful Families, and it now has different iterations. We use Faithful Families prayers for the everyday. So we've said prayers for birthday cakes and Christmas trees and, all of that kind of stuff. But she also now has an Advent book as well. So ways to make things, Advent a faithful, holy space at home, especially if you're going to be missing out on a lot of the church pieces.
Yes.
And you can sign up for a weekly Tuesday newsletter from her website, which I believe is just tracysmith.com.
Yeah. I'll put that link down below.
Perfect. And she will, she'll send, she's doing, the book was scheduled to come out. And then she is also, in her weekly emails, ways to adapt it for pandemic life. So she's very, very thoughtful about that kind of stuff. And if you'll give me one more second, I have a book here. It just came in and I'm so excited about it. I don't know if you know about Matthew Paul Turner, but he is a fantastic children's book author. This is his brand new book, All the Colors of Christmas. A couple of other books that he has are When I Pray for You, When God Made You,
we have When God Made You. Yeah.
Yep. So this is his newest book that just came out, and it is fabulous. Christmas is red It's a shiny new sled. It's candy canes and toy store lanes. It's sprinkles on sweet bread.
Mhm.
So it's everything rhymes. Oh, look at what I just turned to. Holy family. Everything rhymes. So it's great for little kids, but also, you know, it's just a really, Matthew, get his stuff. And I am not being paid to, to advertise his resources. I use his resources with my college students too. So, yeah.
All right. Well, say thank you to Katie and for her giving us her time today to talk about parenting and faith, especially in the midst of a pandemic. And if you have anything that your family has been doing that has meant a lot to you throughout this pandemic, especially when it comes to faith formation, drop it down in the comments. Let us know. We'd love to hear some ideas that didn't come from us or that we might not have run across before.
I would love to borrow them
Yeah.
for my family. Yeah. So yes, please share.
And make sure that you like this video and subscribe to the channel so that you can see all of the stuff as it comes out. But thank you very much for watching, and we will talk to you soon.